If you are a Wright Balance professional, I want to show you our latest breakthrough. If you attended the training in Naples this past month, you will have seen this. If you're not a Wright Balance professional, but you're interested in balance, you can still experience this. If you've seen some of the other videos, we have 9 stance widths. You don't need those for what I'm about to show you. This is specific to golf, and is specific to the 3 types of golf swings by core region. So what you will need, though, is a yardstick, just a blank yardstick. I have micro pore tape, medical tape. You're going to need that. I'll show you how you're going to use that in a little bit. A 3 foot, 3/4 inch dowel pole, and a bungee cord. And instead of this, I use that blue bar with the white end so you can see changes in my body lines. So that's where we're going to begin. So if you can gather that stuff together, and then we'll continue. Mark 3 fingers either hand. First thing you want to do is remove any rings. You'll understand why here in a little bit. So if you have any rings on any fingers, it doesn't matter what finger, please take them off. So the first mark I'm going to make is going to be, here's my palm, first pad up before my knuckle. I'm going to put a line, okay? I could be doing this again on either hand. And then on any knuckle, that knuckle crease right here, I'm going to put a line. And then I'm going to put a line on my little finger. Here's the first pad up, here's the knuckle, and here's the pad just above the knuckle. So please make those 3 marks, and we'll proceed. To notice is how disrupted my core is, okay? You can see the amount of rotation in my pelvis. And if I stand tall here, facing straight ahead, you can see that I'm placing these cards between my index and middle finger, and you can see that my left hand here is rotated in. What happens is my core, as my pelvis rotates, this hand turns in. That's why. So I have pelvic rotation. And no matter what stance width I go to here, I have that pelvic rotation. This is an important concept. So if you do have the dowel pole or you have the bar, put it on your hips. You want to make sure it is flat. You have what's called the anterior iliac crest, your hip bones, right here. You want to be 2 to 3 inches below, but flat on your hips when you put this on. I want you to take the yardstick and place it on the floor in front of you. And whatever tape you're using, I have the micro pore tape here. And I am going to put tape on my index finger where I have that first mark. So just wrap the tape. You don't want to get it into the knuckle region. Don't make it too tight, but you want to have decent pressure. Okay? Now, the breakthrough is as follows. Every core region has an 8-inch stance width range where you will use the ground most efficiently. And I'm going to show you that now. So my 8-inch range, I'm going to do upper core because this is my upper core power spot. So I'm going to define what is my 8-inch range for my upper core. So when you go to your yardstick, upper core is always the narrowest. You'll notice upper core players always have that narrow stance width. So I go to upper core, I'm going to start at 9 inches. I've not seen anyone's beginning point go below 9 yet. That's always a possibility. So I go to 9, I go to 9.5, my hips are still rotated. And if you take a look at my hand, you can see my left hand is still rotated well in. I go to 10, still rotated. I go to 10.5, and everything squares up. So This, earlier I was not square when I was standing at any stance with. I'm square here. I'm going to add 8 inches to that. So 8 inches would take me out to 18 and a half, and I am totally square. So anywhere between 10 and a half and 18 and a half, I'm going to be square. When I add knee flex in this range, so again, my upper core stance width range is between 10 and a half and 18 and a half. So wherever you first find that first inch, or first square hip line, you have to have the power spot covered. And what is this? There's a research group, but I'm not going to go into detail, showing that at the cellular level, applying force at a focal point on the cell, they were able to measure propagation of force through that cell. So I'm going to, in the discussion section, I'll identify, and they refer to that as action at a distance. Action at a distance. And that's what I believe we're seeing here, action at a distance. Apply here, it impacts the entire core, entire body. So here I am. I'm on 14 and a half. I add knee flex with this on within that range, and my weight goes immediately to the balls of my feet. Immediately to the balls of my feet. So anywhere in this range, I'm going to go out to 18 and a half. That's the outside limit. And my balance is right over the balls of my feet. Now, so I have balance over the balls of my feet. I have a range. I can play golf anywhere within this range. If you haven't seen a Wright Balance professional, this goes multiple steps further, and to use it, well, you'll feel it here in a moment, but to use it, it'd be wise for you to go see one of our Wright Balance professionals. So I'm going to set my posture as an upper core player into my setup. Now I want to see how I use the ground. Feel my weight on the balls of my feet. So for an upper core player, we start back with the hips. This is an easy way to check, by the way, sequencing of motion. I'm in an upper core, my 8-inch upper core stance width range. And I'm going to start back with the hips, and you'll notice that my center of mass is target side. My center of mass is target side. As I turn back through, I reach this point, I feel I'm going to change direction, and I'll rise. So I get my power out of the ground. First of all, rotationally here, a little linear, a little horizontal, which is linear, and then I change direction, and there's my vertical ground force. So I'm going to rise out of that. You've heard it referred to, you may have been told, wow, you're coming out of posture. If you're an upper core player, that's a great sign, coming out of posture, because you are going to use the ground properly there. Now, let's just take a quick look before I go to mid-core at a couple of things. If I don't start my sequencing with my hips, and I start back with my shoulders, my weight is centered, and then I'm moving in a linear fashion. I'm going to start with my shoulders, and I'm going to the trail side. So your upper core golf swing, when made properly, in posture, backside out, you really need to get that backside out in the upper core. And I turn with the hips, center of mass is on target side, I turn back through and I rise. So when you're testing all of this, I'd encourage you to put a ball down. So I just put one down. So another way of looking at this is, if I have on this shaft, I have one of our shaft clips. This shaft clip is, the center of that card is aimed right through, I have 2 lines on this face, going right through those 2 lines on the face. Yes. So I get my, and when you get your grip, by the way, you always want to do it within your 8-inch range. Always within your 8-inch range. Hold the club up. I'm going to point it here, let it drop a little. Ideally, you can see that card. I'm on 15.5. Remember, my stance width range is 10.5 to 18.5. So I'm going to step down to 9. And as my hand rotates in, club face opens. Okay? Club face opens. I'm going to go out to 19.5. Club face is open. I step back within my stance width range and that club face squares up. So not only in and out of this 8-inch range, you're going to get changes in club face, as well as changes in balance. So if I go too wide, if I go out to 20, set my posture, I can feel my hips are open, start back with my hips. I'm stuck in the backswing, I can't get shoulder rotation, and I'm moving to the trail side. So the other things that you need to be aware of is this only works once you assume a grip, or once you get a handle, club handle in your hands. Only works if that grip size fits you. So if you're a Wright Balance professional, you know how to fit the grip size. If you're not, and you're able to experience this, go see one of our Wright Balance professionals. They'll set your grip size and show you a few other things that will impact your game. Here's my 10.5 to 18.5 inch range. Mark it on an alignment stick, put tape on an alignment stick, hold on to your yardstick, and use it as a reference. I do want to show you one more thing though. Finger. I'm standing within my 8-inch range. So I have the upper core power spot marked. You can see how square my hips are. I go to 10.5. And I'm still good, and I go to narrow, and I fly wide open. My hips always open no matter what. I go too wide. As long as I'm within that range, I'm good. Now, inclement weather. A few years ago, made a video showing the impact a jacket will have, or clothing will have. So this is just an overshirt. This of the sleeves on this. So let's see if this overshirt has anything to do with my 8-inch range. Does it impact? I'm on my first number. No. There's no impact. Go too wide, no impact. So something like this, and you want to test this on your own. A shirt like this doesn't impact. Let's take a look at another jacket. Plain inclement weather. So you're playing inclement weather. You get a heavier jacket on. You want to test this before you ever get to the golf course. I just want you to have an understanding of the factors. I'm at my first number. Again, still have my upper core power spot marked. And my hips are open on my first number. My hips are open on 10.5. They're also open on 13. On 12, I'm sorry, it was 12. So just about 2 inches. So my first number now appears to be 12.5. So this added 2 inches to my 8. So if I'm on 12.5 now, that means I can go out to 20.5 and still be square. My numbers were 10.5, my 8-inch range was 10.5 to 18.5. Now, with this jacket on, I move to 12.5 to 20.5. It's still an 8-inch range. The clothing made a difference. Move the tape from my upper core power spot. I'm going to place one now on the first knuckle up. Okay? And again, this can be on any finger. So this piece of tape I'm going to put right over that knuckle. You want pressure on that knuckle. And we're going to take a look at what middle core. I'll put the tape. We're going to take a look now at my 8-inch range for middle core. Now, if you recall, my range for upper core was 10.5 to 18.5. Every core region is going to have a 8-inch stance width range. Again, this is very important because it's going to determine how you use the ground. We understand from Dr. G. and Betty's research how every core region uses the ground. You just saw upper rotational, a bit linear, but mostly rotational and vertical. Your mid-core player uses linear, rotational, and vertical. We'll take a look at that in a moment. Okay, as I get set here, I'm going to go to 10.5. And you can see I'll open was my beginning number with upper core. So now I'm going to move to 13.5. I still have a rotation. But I know if you're a Wright Balance professional and you're experiencing this, you'll notice I just moved to 14.5 and I'm absolutely square. 10.5 was my first number for upper core. To find my mid-core, all I did was add 4 inches. And that's the first number in my mid-core. So you'll notice that all of these again are 8s, 8 inches. 8 is one of our Fibonacci numbers. So if 14.5 is good, and it is my first number, at 8, 22.5 is going to be my last and widest number where I can be. And that's 22.5, and I'm absolutely square. If I go to 23, my hips open. Back to 22.5, I square up. So anywhere between 14.5, as long as I have this tape over my power spot of any finger, I will be square. Okay, let's look at it this way. Again, once again, you can see the how my hands hang. I'm not going to go through all of this that I went through, but the same testing applies to every core region. I'm not going to put the jackets on here. I'm not going to, I am going to show you motion for mid-core. So I'm going to go to 14.5, which was my first number. Notice how my hands hang exactly, I can just feel it, how they hang exactly the same. I'm going to move a 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch narrower. My hips rotate till I can probably see them. My left hand just turned in. Back to 14.5, my first number, and I squared up. If I go out to 22.5, so as a mid-core player, my stance width range is 14.5 to 22.5. As long as it's putter through driver. As long as I stay in that range and use my power spots when I play, then I'm golden in terms of how I'm going to use the ground, assuming everything is good in my setup. So, let's take a look at motion. So how does your mid-core player start the club back? Well, the upper core player starts with the hips, lower core player starts with the shoulders, and the logic becomes, well, if I start back with everything together, and when I go into my setup, let me put the ball back on the floor. When you're working on motion, I would strongly encourage you to have a ball down. And this is because I've seen so many players and what they do. When there is not a ball down, they'll move well off the ball. When the ball's down, there's a place for focus. So I'm going to go to 18.5, right in the middle of my middle core stance width range. I'm going to get my posture set simultaneously. I want you to make sure, even though you're setting simultaneously, allow that backside to go out. Allow that backside to go out, and I'll show you why in a moment. So if I turn everything back together, you'll notice how I am very centered. Center of mass is right over my pelvis. Okay? And as I turn back through, notice I'm rising a little bit. So let's do that again. I'm going to go simultaneously, let the backside go out. I'll show you this down the line in a moment. And we want to turn everything back together. And as I turn back through, I feel my weight is a little bit forward, which is going to create that change of position. I'm going to use the ground vertically. Now we see a lot of mid-core players who don't use the ground vertically. They don't use the ground vertically. So let's take a look at maybe why that's the case. I'm going to go back to 18.5. I'm going to add simultaneous set, but I'm not allowing that backside to go out. I'm just into this setup, and I rotate back, very centered, and I just turn through very centered. So let's look at that down the line. Backside to feel the vertical ground force. And again, when we look at this on a swing catalyst or S2M, we do see all of these ground forces used for the mid-core player. You see the rotational, you see the linear, and you see the vertical. Some more than others, but you'll always get pretty even amount in all. So I'm going to go in again, once again, I'm going to go into a simultaneous set. I'm going to let that backside go out a little more. So I've let the backside go out a little more, and now everything back together. I feel very centered over the ball. As I turn back through, I'm going to rise. And it's a function of my backside, I believe. Okay? One more time. Simultaneous set, let that backside go out, rotate, and I can feel the change in direction. Change in direction being vertically, and I'm going to rise out of that. Now let's take a look at just a simultaneous set and more of just a sit down here. Okay? So as I rotate back, very centered, center of mass is perfect. As I turn through, I'm right over the ball and turning on through. So I'm not going to use the ground as much vertically. Is all balance. As this backside goes out, the counterbalance is more forward, and more forward position sets the stage for the launch in the mid-core. Two is, I have marked 14.5 to 22.5. Again, be aware of the clothing you may be wearing. On a yardstick, put it on an alignment stick, whatever. From my upper and then my middle, now I'm going to place it on the lower core. This mark we put on the second pad up. You're going to take a piece of tape and put it over that pad. Very simple. You want it to be snug but not too tight. And when you're playing, I would encourage it for recruiting, make sure you've taken your rings off. And I would put a piece of tape on the power spot of your core region on any finger. As you get into working with the Wright Balance professional, they'll tell you through the middle finger it has to cross in that power spot as well. So I have another blank yardstick here. Let's take a look at a lower core player. So you know, if you'll recall, 10.5 was the starting point for my upper core. 14.5 was the starting point for my mid-core. And if we add 4 inches once again, 18.5 should be, it's the end point of my upper core, should be the beginning point of my lower core, only if I have marked and I have taped this position. It's only once the core is disrupted, the tape is recruiting, we're getting propagation of force through the body. And as I said in the earlier part of this video, I will put references I'll give you a link to an article out of Harvard Medical that talks about propagation of force and action at a distance, which is what I believe is going on here. Okay, so an 18 and a half should be, I'm going to go first of all 15 and a half. And you can see, once again, you can see how my left hand is internally rotated. As I relax, my hips go as well. So the direction your hips go in generally means that in any particular stance with that hand on the same side is going to pronate or internally rotate. Okay, let's go down. I'm going to go to 18 and a half now, and I immediately squared up. And you can see how my hands hang exactly the same. So, 18 and a half, that means I should be, stance with range is going to be 26 and a half, is my widest point as a lower core player. Now, if you've read some of the literature and you've been through, you know upper core has the narrowest stance, lower core has the widest, which is consistent with what we're seeing here. So, I'm going to go out to 26 and a half, pretty wide, but I've played lower core before and played pretty darn good. You can see hands hang exactly the same. Go to 27, hips rotate, hands change. Okay, I'm going to go back to 26 and a half, and anywhere between 18 and a half and 26 and a half, I'll be absolutely square. So let's take a look now at how the lower core player uses the ground. So lower core player actually sits down first. So the backside is not out. Backside is not out. I sit down first, then I add spine angle. My thigh angle and spine angle are going to be identical. And as I rotate, start my shoulders back, release my hips, you'll notice the left knee is going pretty much straight out. And you'll notice my center of mass is over the trail side. Okay, and as I turn back through, it's so easy to rotate, so easy to rotate. And the reason it is easy to rotate is balance. So if you come back, once you've found your stance with range, and now I'm in that range, I add knee flex, and my weight's right over the center of my arches. You'll feel it as back toward the heels. If you really focus, it's over the center of the arches. So what that means is, as I turn, as I rotate, trail side is loaded, and as I turn back through, this is so simple to turn when the weight is over the center of the arches. If I move forward, which I don't want to do, and I rotate back, and I turn through, I'm going to have to change direction to be able to turn the hips. I'm on the balls of the feet. My weight has been forward. So over the center of the arches, as a low core player, I'm here and here. Think of the center of the arches being just at the front edge of your ankle through the foot. That's going to be very close to right over the center of the arch. And that's where you're going to feel this weight. So using the ground, for the lower core player, they use it rotationally and linearly and not vertically. Very little, if any at all. It'll show up a bit, but there's no vertical ground force in use to create power. And we get our power from the ground. So if you find your 8-inch stance with range, you understand the impact of clothing, understand what happens to the face angle when you're not in that range, you understand how you're going to use the ground from upper, middle, and lower. You understand the impact clothing has on these 8-inch ranges. And you're on your way to playing much better golf. So see one of our Wright Balance professionals. This will only work, by the way, if your grip size fits. If your grip size fits, you can find your 8-inch range, you're good to go. But you want your power spot set. It's not just the power spot, for example, I need that power spot in my middle finger where the club crosses. I need to have enough heel pad on top. There are a number of variables, strength and weakness of grip. All of these factors go in to hitting the ball well. But for your stance with range, this is where you're going to find that you're going to use the ground most efficiently. Thank you for watching.